Hey, welcome back to Knicks fans. I'm here with Jersey Andre today again, and we're basically going to do a preseason preview. The New York Knicks are going to start, basically going to play the first game today. It's going to be tonight. I think is at 7 p.m. And I think we're playing, I think it's the Detroit Pistons, right, Jersey Andre?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, okay. So
Absolutely.
yeah, so basically, we're going to talk about a few things. We're going to talk a little bit about what the expectations are for the New York Knicks this year. Talk about what we're expecting for some of the players like Obi, RJ, and we're going to talk about what the win totals are going to be again this year. And so that's pretty much what we're going to focus on. But before we get into that, hey Jersey, it's funny. I think it was like a week ago. There was I think it was one of those shows on Fox Sports One. I can't remember the two guys' name. They're both writers, and they were talking about um, how Giannis and Joker felt like the European game was a little harder than the NBA, and it was mostly because of, I guess, because of how the rules are, how they did the rule changes, and now it's just like the league is a little softer. And so they were saying basically it's so much easier to score in the NBA than it is in Europe. And so the thing that's really funny about that was because I was looking at the highlights of the Suns played an NBL team a couple of days ago. Or was it yesterday? They basically got smacked around by this NBL team. I mean, I'm talking about the Phoenix Suns with like all their stars. They had Chris Paul playing. They had
Okay.
I can't remember the Devin Booker playing. They also had DeAndre Ayton playing. They had everyone, and they were not trying to lose the game. You know, obviously, the rotations weren't basically ran in such a way where like it was conducive to making sure you won the game. But however, when the starters were on the court, they were serious. They were trying to go hard at this NBL team, but this NBL team just like smacked the Suns. It wasn't even like, I mean, they were just like they were launching threes all day, and it was unbelievable. But it's kind of really interesting to kind of hear that whole debate about like, a couple of decades ago, actually more maybe about 2.5 decades ago. I mean, the rest of the world was like so far behind in basketball, but now it's like it feels like they've all caught up. Have you heard anything about that stuff? And what do you think about it?
Yeah, well, actually, we started seeing the world catch up in the Olympics,
Oh,
um, over the years, where remember the dream team, if the dream team didn't win by 50, you know, that became the expectation. And each
yes.
dream team afterwards, we started seeing those numbers drastically decrease. So now the wins were, I think that next dream team was maybe 30 points and then 25.
Mhm.
And then eventually the American teams just started losing. They were coming home with the gold. And so it wasn't a given any longer. Um, Playing, the European style basketball, it's definitely different. I mean, they've made some drastic changes over the years in the NBA to speed the game up.
Yeah.
Again, they realize that offense is what sells, um, and keeping players from being injured, from taking those hard fouls, like from the '80s.
Yeah.
Like we often wonder, like, can the LeBron James and the Kevin Durant's would they've had the same success in the '80s and the early '90s as they have right now? I can't imagine. We didn't have players well outside of the chief from the Celtics, playing 20 years and 18 years and still playing at such a high level. You see that now. Like, look at LeBron. LeBron doesn't even appear to slow down. He could probably still play at a high level for the next 2 or 3 years. So, yeah, I think, them changing up, the rules and what it's called. And I mean, remember back in the '80s and the '90s, we could hand check. You can actually hand check someone to keep a defender in front of you. They took that away. So a lot of little nuisance that they have taken away to speed the game up, and now the European players have caught up.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting to see it too, and now everybody's talking about it, and then it was just really funny to hear them talk about it, and then like for that NBL team, it wasn't even a Eurozone team. was just an NBL team, and that just came over and just like smacked the Suns. It was like I was like, wow, and it does make you it does make you wonder about the rule changes, right? And so it is really interesting though in terms of the rule changes. Like I kind of feel like in the playoffs they're starting to strike the right balance in the playoffs, where I felt like a few years, like for a long time, it was really soft. Like they were basically calling it the same way you would call it in the regular season, where it was like, you couldn't touch anyone. But I've kind of felt like the last couple of years, like the last 2 years, I think they're starting to they're allowing them to be more physical, like in the playoffs. Because if you remember, like even like this past season, like this last playoffs, I mean, Jason Tatum shut down Kevin Durant, and it was like, and Jason Tatum played him fairly physical. Jason Tatum, obviously, he's got the athletic tools, and he can lock in. I think he can lock down a lot of people if he puts his mind to it. However, the fact that he was able to do it to Kevin Durant, it just kind of showed us that I feel like they kind of like they're starting to like allow them to play a little more in the playoffs. I want to say one more thing that's a little controversial.
Okay.
Honestly, everyone talks about how tough it was for Jordan and the Bulls and how he was the GOAT, you know.
Sure. Sure.
Michael Jordan, like the reason why they changed the rules to the game. The first player that started receiving ticky-tack fouls was Michael Jordan. I remember after basically their whole bout with like the Pistons,
Yeah.
um, even when he went like after their whole bout with the Pistons, late '80s, early '90s, I felt like after that they started calling like they basically Jordan started getting a lot of calls. Not saying they weren't still more physical today than they were. They were more physical back then than they were today. However, a lot of people like to give credit to Michael Jordan for playing in his physical period, but Michael Jordan was basically the reason why they changed the rules. And because they used to complain so much, they cried so much about basically how tough the Detroit Pistons were. And because of that, and because Jordan was a star, transcendent superstar, even with the physical play. They decided to actually change the rules. So I think a lot of times people talk about how soft the league is these days, and talk about how hard Jordan had it. They need to basically lay the blame at the feet of Michael Jordan because he's the one who actually them and the Bulls are the ones that actually forced the league's hand. They're the ones that forced the league to change the rules. So that's kind of like just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, right. You're absolutely right. They did change the rules because of Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
Now, granted, I'm a diehard Knicks fan, so if it wasn't for Michael Jordan, I'm sure we would have had at least 2 or 3 championships by now. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
I never advocate for Mr. Michael Jeffrey Jordan there. How Okay, but however, the Detroit Pistons were god awful. They were. I watched actually probably maybe about a month or two ago. I watched some of the old Pistons games. It was like I think it was the Bad Boys, the Detroit Pistons Bad Boys. I mean, it just got to a point where Lambeer and all those guys, wasn't even basketball anymore. It was getting clotheslined, and
Yeah.
it was more like the WWF or WWE. The league needed to change some things up because what was happening. Now let's go. If you want to really get it's a little touchy, conversation.
Hmm.
But if we go a little bit deeper, so David Stern at that time wanted to clean up the image
Yes.
because what was happening, a lot of these fights were breaking out. God, as a Knicks fan, we had some really good ones. And however, it was happening at such an alarming rate that the fans, especially the ones who were paying high ticket value, didn't want to come to the games anymore, and they were starting to be known, as like this thug league.
Hmm.
And so that's when David Stern started making the players. If you remember, the players had to start dressing up to games. So when
Yeah.
they entered the games and they sat in the bench, they had to be dressed appropriately. And I blame a little of that on Allen Iverson as well, pushing the envelope in those days too. just from a addressing an apparel standpoint. But so there were a lot of kind of things, a lot of variables that kind of changed the game. But definitely the Jordan rule was definitely the first. Um, and they had to do something. It you know Now would I like to see that physical game again? Absolutely. Am I glad you get to see it a little in the playoffs? Sure. Um, and what was the guy name you just named from the Celtics? I'm drawing a blank. Tatum. Tatum.
Yeah.
Now Tatum is an excellent two-way player. Guy, I mean, he can do it on both ends. Definitely a rising future, superstar, in the making. And so, in the playoffs, you're right. Everything turns up in the playoffs. And even like just I know we're kind of going different places, but just even the Knicks in the Carmelo days, Carmelo, and as much as I'm a big fan of number 7, but he didn't play any defense unless it was the playoffs.
Yeah.
Carmelo in the playoffs is a totally different person.
Yeah.
And you have to be able to hit that switch, right? In that playoffs. Like, a lot of folks can play well, during the course of a season, but when that playoff hit, and that's why I watched that playoff game with the Knicks and the Hawks, 2 years ago. I think I might have watched that series probably 3 or 4 times because each time I decided on a different player I was going to focus on. Because you're watching the game, you kind of seeing all what's going on. So I wanted to watch and just see who was impactful and who was not. And so, yeah. So you bring up a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's I do think they're starting to strike the right balance. And not to get too far off tangent, but since you brought up Tatum, so every year I do an analysis, usually mid-season, to basically determine who's going to win the MVP. And actually, the last 2 seasons I've actually called it, and it's basically just purely statistical analysis, just to see based on statistics, and also I do the correlation statistics to see basically based on like how much impact they're having, like how much control the person has on the game. That's one piece of it. Then the other piece
Okay.
is just plain on production statistics, production, and how efficient they're able to produce. The last 2 years, it was always basically Joker was basically first, kind of up there by himself, and then kind of like you'll have like Giannis, like a little lower behind him. And both of them were like basically far ahead of the field, and then you'll have like Joel Embiid. Um, uh, and last year was the same thing. Those top three. Fourth place was actually Kevin Durant, and then fifth, as far as the most impactful player in the league. Fifth was actually Jason Tatum. So if you're talking about best top 5 players in the league and you're looking at just pure statistics, it's Joker, Giannis, Embiid, Kevin Durant, and then Jason Tatum. And so it was like, so that's been pretty interesting. But yeah, the last 2 seasons I've done those analysis. It's always been like it's been Joker. Joker has won it those two, and actually the stats basically does back it up, and it says Joker's by far the best player in the
Who
league
was
statistically.
who was number 2?
Number 2 was Giannis.
Giannis. Okay.
Yeah,
So
and the problem.
I'm gonna say all the first 3 are all big men. All right.
Correct. Yep. And then
Interesting.
even Kevin
Okay.
Durant is sort of a big man if you think about it. And
Sure.
so the reason why Joker's so far ahead too is because like they run so much of their offense through Joker, and it's not a good thing. As you see in the playoffs, that's not a good thing. Like I've always said, like when the correlation between your performance and the team's performance is too high, that means the team is way too dependent on you, and so your team is going to get bounced early. So that's pretty much what it means, and that's what's been happening to the Nuggets. They're just not very difficult to stop in the playoffs. I mean, they run through teams. They play great in the regular season, but once the teams basically get down into the playoffs and they get serious, it's much easier to take the Nuggets out. And it doesn't mean Joker is the best player. It's just those statistics doesn't necessarily mean he's the best player, because honestly, I think Giannis is by far the best player in the league.
Okay.
However, it's just because of the way they run their offense and they're so dependent on him. It's like the stats basically his stats are just kind of like out of this world. And then also the efficiency rate. He shoots, I think he's shooting like something like 54. He shoots like 53, 54% from the field or something like that. And then his defense is not that great. However, because he's so efficient on the offensive end, that it's like and so that's the biggest thing too, you know. But yeah, but Jason, I guess the whole point was Jason Tatum was actually number 5 on that list. And so no surprise that, you know, he got to the finals and his team was actually there in the finals. And the good thing too is like if you look at all those teams, um, I mean, all those players. So Jason Tatum, he's he was 5th, but if you look at his correlation between his performance and the team wasn't very high, so that was good. So it shows he's a well balanced team. You look at Giannis. I'm sorry. You look at Kevin Durant. It was the same thing. So they're a fairly balanced team. You look at Joel Embiid, same. So they're a fairly balanced team. You look at Giannis, same thing. They're a fairly balanced team, but Giannis was the only one where it's like it was like insanely high. He's like 0.72 or something like that. And he's been like at zero point 0.7, over zero point 0.7 the last 2 years. Uh, but but yeah, just you know that I just kind of wanted to touch on those a little bit.
Okay,
Obviously,
so are you predicting that Jason Tatum's going to be MVP this year?
well, no, I can't do that yet. I got to basically, I have to wait. I usually, a lot of these analysis, I wait till like mid season. And then because at mid season, these players are basically who they are. So like around the 50th game or so, between the
Okay.
50th and the 60th game, I'll do the analysis and then to see like where everyone is. And actually last year, I think I did it like around the 60th game. And so, but yeah, I mean, he's always he was up there last year, so I would not be surprised if he's up there again this year. Unless, although like Brown took a huge step up in the playoffs last year, so maybe if Brown basically keeps steps up a little more, you might see Tatum's number dip slightly. However, Tatum is going to end up being a little more efficient too. So,
Mm.
and I think that's going to make them even a more potent team, especially in the regular season this year. But we gotta kind of have to wait and see what transpires with the Celtics. So
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, let's get into the Knicks. Obviously, preseason begins today for them, and the first thing I just wanted to talk about real quick: what are you expecting for the New York Knicks this year?
I expect the Knicks to. Well, you know what? It depends. There's a couple of factors.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I expect the Knicks to be a much better team. Just statistically, we've had some major upgrades in 2 critical positions. One with the point guard, bringing in Jalen Brunson, who is a all star in the making. He's been in the league for years, and I think you're going to feel his impact quickly. I think he will. He's someone who doesn't need the ball in his hand. He's not ball dominant.
Mm-hmm.
He can play off ball. He can play wherever you need him to play. And he has that gear that he can go into that second and third gear when it's time. When he realizes that the offense is stagnant, he can be able to facilitate. So, and then also, I think we've lost Taj Gibson in the center position, center/forward position, and we picked up the guys at how do you pronounce his last name? Heinstead. Am I
Hartenstein,
pronouncing it?
Hartenstein, yeah.
Heinstein. Yeah, Hartenstein. Yeah, Hartenstein. I think he's going to be more impactful than most people think he is. I
Mm-hmm.
think he is one of the most. Uh, he's a very skilled big man who's been clearly underutilized. This is a guy who has a mid-range shot and a three-pointer, and he's, I would consider, a blue-collar player. And you're
Mm-hmm.
going to see uh, a lot of his value. And I think once the Knicks fans are going to love how he plays. And so I expect with those 2 upgrades, when we did lose Burks, so that was, instant offense.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I expect the Knicks, if the Knicks can stay healthy, that's a big if. And if RJ can take his game to the next level, if Julius um, plays a lot better, which we see statistically when he has an efficient point guard, he plays well. Like when Derrick Rose is on the court, he plays much better when he's with Derrick Rose. And so um, statistically, I feel like the Knicks could at least win anywhere between 5 and 7 games more than they did the year before. So I wouldn't be surprised if they end somewhere maybe with between, I would say maybe 45 wins.
Okay.
I could see 45 wins.
Yeah, that's a good split. I mean, it's for me, I kind of feel the same way. I think for the Knicks, the bottom I see is like 41 wins. And I do think they're talented enough with the right coaching and right rotation and with the right balance. I can see them winning 50 plus games. But that's, obviously that's really optimistic. And honestly, I don't even there's no data that, that backs up the claim that the Knicks are going to win 50 plus games this season. All the data suggests they're going to be around, 41, 42 games, but that's all because of, we don't know what we're going to get from Julius and RJ. If we're going to get a more efficient Julius and RJ, if we get more efficient Julius and RJ this season, then I think we're going to win. We're going to be, especially if they can get to 43, 44%, then we can see our win total get near 50 or even past 50. So yeah, I definitely, I agree with you in that 45 is actually a good split. If you go between 41 or 42 and 50, 45 is actually a
Yeah,
good place to be.
right.
So
I don't see us getting over 45, but
mhm.
I am I'm shooting for the stars with 45.
Yeah.
Reality again, and you make a good point about rotation. I think that was a major problem. I think, by uh, Tibbs, who historically is known for running his players into the ground,
Mhm.
uh, he doesn't have that balance. And as you notice, a lot of times in the fourth quarter, where because Julius had played so long, he was gassed. You could see
Yeah,
him; he was physically gassed,
I agree.
and so uh, to, to me this year, there's really no excuse for Tibbs to do this. I think the Knicks have, if not at least the top five bench in the league. I would put the New York Knicks bench up against any team's other uh, bench players, and I guarantee you, I feel like we have a few players who could possibly start on other teams. Like I could see Emmanuel quickly starting on another team as their point guard, um, or definitely a six man. Uh, and I could see even Obi starting on other teams. Uh, and so, put in the right position, the right coach, you'll see those players excel as well.
I definitely agree with you on that. It's honestly, I agree with you. All of this is going to be based on what Tom Thibodeau does if he knows how to use these guys correctly. And what you said about Quickly, I think it's spot on. I think Quickly is going to be very interesting. Maybe not necessarily this year. I do think he takes a big step forward this year as well. He continues what he was doing towards the end of last season. I mean, he's the one player. I'm like, they're gonna have to figure out what to do. Like it's so you have Jalen Brunson, and you have D Rose this year, and you figure, okay, maybe you have D Rose another 2 years. I mean, are they going to be able to keep Emmanuel quickly? I mean, honestly, for good teams, it's good to have a really good, really deep team, and I think those are the kind of teams that actually do really well. That actually, that's how you build dynasties. Where if you got people on the bench that could start on other teams, I think that's I know talking dynasty is crazy right now, but when I say dynasty, I'm talking about repeated playoff uh,
Sure.
you know, playoff appearances. Like those Knicks teams in the '90s, people consider them to be dynasty, although they didn't win, obviously. But they were a mainstay in the playoffs. They always won the division, and they were always in the playoffs, and they always made a deep run in the playoffs. So, and I think for us to be able to do that again, to make runs into the playoffs regularly, I do think like it's a balance you got to be able to strike, right? Although we're all eager to see Emmanuel quickly get a shot and like be promoted, and then you kind of have divided loyalties between like Quickly and Jalen, and then you had divided loyalties between like Julius and Obi. But to tell you the truth, honestly, to be like a really good team, you probably need all those guys. You need all four of them, you know. So it's really interesting. It's a difficult balance to strike, but I do see Quickly playing much better this year, continuing what he did last year. I see honestly, I see Obi coming this year too. I mean, both of them played with so much confidence towards the end of last year, and people are just focusing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they were focusing mostly on the last two games, but Obi, if you looked at all the games he played last season, where he played like let's say 25 minutes or more, I think there was only one
Mhm.
game. I think you reminded me of the one where he didn't do really well. He scored maybe single digits when Julius was out, but that was the only game where he didn't show up when Julius was out of the lineup. Every other game he played, he showed up, and it actually shows in the numbers. I think what does it say? Every time that OB played and Julius didn't play, wasn't in a game, I think he's averaging like 20 points a game or something like that, and averaging like fit on like 52, 53% shooting. So, that I think, it's so I think those two players are something they're gonna show something really I think they're going to continue showing flashes this year. And I do think you need, we're going to need all these guys if we're going to make like a deep run in the playoffs, to tell you the truth. And the coaches need to find a way to strike a balance. And the front office needs to find a way to also strike a balance, and even same thing with the fans. I think the fans really need to recognize like really good teams, especially the kinds that make deep runs in the playoffs. They got people on the bench that should be starting somewhere else. But if you get everyone to buy in and everyone sees that, okay, we got something special here, then that's where you see people then start to sacrifice. Like, I think I'm just going to stay at least a few years to see what happens. And then maybe they move on afterwards. But I think it's going to be really difficult if they don't find a way to strike a balance. It's going to be very difficult for them to keep Quickly and Obi. I think less Obi, but I think Quickly is going to be more difficult for them to keep him. The reason why I'm thinking now Obi is going to be easier to keep him is more about leadership, and that's the next thing I'm actually going to ask you is who do you think the leader is on this team for this season, and who do you see being the leader going forward?
I think it's going to be Jalen Brunson. I would like for it to be RJ. I
Mm-hmm.
really would. I think, um, RJ has a certain tenacity about him. I think he's that guy that can lead by example. Um, I think he has potential,
Mm-hmm.
leadership. I believe he'll hold people accountable. I think there's still some growing pains with him just from a maturity standpoint at times. Uh, we got to keep remembering he's 22, and
Yes.
it's and it's hard for a 22-year-old when you have some seasoned veterans on the league to say, hey, uh, you need to defer to me, or I feel like I think with Jalen Brunson, I feel like he will be this year. It's going to be either Jalen or RJ. Not sure which one, but I'm 100% sure. But I really feel like it's going to most likely be Jalen. I think as that point guard, I think he will be vocal. I think he will put people in the right places. I feel like he is going to be that extension of Tibbs on the court as Derrick Rose is. That's one of the things that Derrick Rose brings to the table as well. But I feel like Derrick Rose is so injury prone. You never know how much of Derrick Rose you'll ever get. So I think Jalen Brunson uh, displays uh, the type of leadership that the New York Knicks has been lacking for the last, 3 or 4 years or so.
Yeah, I agree. I think the primary leader, I think the main leader on his team right now, from looking at the press conferences, I'm not in the locker room, so I could be playing wrong, but it really feels like the leader on this team when he's healthy, it looks like it's Derrick Rose, and it seems like the
Okay.
front office and also the coaching staff is trying to get him to be more vocal because he's the one. He's actually honestly last year he was the best player on his team. 2 years ago he was the best player on his team, although obviously he
Sure.
can only play very limited minutes. Like if you play him 20 minutes a game, he's the best player on the floor for 20 minutes a game. Uh, however, and he
Yeah.
was, and so I think
So
I'm sorry. Go
okay, well, let
ahead.
me ask you this question. So do you think that uh, Derrick Rose at this junction in his career, not like what he's done in the past, is better than Jalen Brunson?
You know, honestly, I got to see Jalen Brunson's defense earlier this. It's hard for me to answer now, but the crazy thing about
Okay.
Derrick Rose is, I would say honestly, I would probably, if you told me Derrick Rose even like the one last year, and he didn't play that great last year before he got injured, but he played well enough. The thing about Derrick Rose that's so crazy to me is like under Tom Thibodeau, his defense is really good. Like last year, if you look at the defensive stats for him on NBA.com, I think he was
Okay.
holding opponents down to like something like 40% from the field or even less than 40. So
Mm,
I don't know how he, like, I don't understand it, but I guess because he's got, he's Thibodeau does hold him accountable, and they've known each other for a long time, and he knows what Thibodeau's about. But it's the defense, right? And I think it's only like 15 minutes. But let me stop talking crazy. No, it's Jalen Brunson, because Rose cannot give you. Rose is the best player on the floor, I would say, for 15 minutes at a time, a game. He can be the best player on the floor for 15 minutes a game. But Jalen Brunson is going to be the best player, is a better player than Jalen Rose at this point. And so I think right now is going to be Derrick Rose is the leader of the team along with Jalen, until like Jalen, because Jalen is pretty new. He's trying to be the leader, but he's also like trying to prove himself and trying to fit in. And so I think it's like is Derrick and Jalen, and then once like Jalen feels like really comfortable, I think he's basically going to take over. I think I think you make a great point about RJ, because I was thinking about the same thing the last few days, because it's the age, right? It's like
right.
Julius on his squad and other older people on his squad that are veterans. And so now, if you, let's say, like, for example, you're going to have stuff like last year where he's clapping at Julius to get the ball. And Julius is like, is this 21-year-old youngin actually clapping at me to give him the ball? And,
Right.
and yes, RJ was having a great game, and he's a better closer. You can say he's probably a better closer than Julius. However, Julius is probably thinking like, you shooting worse than me from the field. Like, maybe you're shooting good today, but I mean, like, honestly, RJ was shooting 40% from the field last year. And, uh, Julius wasn't much better, but at least he was slightly above 41%. And so, you kind of combine that, not proving yourself yet in terms of efficiency wise and being able to get it done, you combine that with his age, I think it's hard for example, for Julius to see RJ as the leader. And so I think even, I think RJ is going to continue trying to work on being a leader. But I think it's something he's going to have to show and prove and really earn it. I think he's going to have to show that, like, okay, it's not just about like, yeah, talk and demeanor and working. All that stuff is great. And you could be a leader, that kind of leader. But the fact that he's young and he hasn't been able to prove that he's the best player on the offensive end on this team, it just kind of makes it difficult. And so with that said, that's why I've been thinking, um, if RJ stays, I definitely think, obviously, given the fact that they got Obi behind Julius, now I'm almost sure they're going to trade Julius. Because it's like, if I don't think you can have RJ and Julius on the same squad, because at some point you're going to need RJ to take over as the leader, and he wants to be the leader. And I think, RJ is going to be coming, and if he keeps improving and he keeps coming, I just I don't see how they get around it, because RJ is going to he's going to want this to be his team, you know. But he's going to have to prove it though. But right now, I think is Derrick Rose and Jalen Brunson, and Jalen Brunson is going to end up taking over as the leader by the end of the season. And you figure maybe a couple of years from now, you're going to see RJ coming trying to be the leader. And so yeah, So for the most part, I definitely agree with you. Is basically it's Brunson. I also agree with you with the whole age thing being an issue for RJ. And so that's it's going to be interesting to see how that works out.
So
Um,
you think the Knicks will eventually move Julius Randle this year?
now I'm almost convinced that they have to, because if you because especially if he continues to prove himself and he improves efficiency. And last year, RJ was acting towards the end of the season. He was acting like this is his squad. But
Mm,
when he came down the stretch, Julius wasn't trying to hear that. Like, and
sure.
in some ways, I kind of get it because you like RJ hasn't really. Although like RJ probably should have deferred to. I'm sorry, Julius should have deferred to RJ, and like in some of the games, especially the games where RJ was cooking towards the end of the game. And I think Julius not deferring was just, I think was a little boneheaded. But overall, you can kind of see if you look at it objectively, you can kind of see why would Julius let RJ be the leader on the team and be the constant closer when he's shooting worse than Julius from the field, and also he's much younger than Julius. So I can kind of see probably why it was an issue last year. But yeah, I do think at some point they're gonna have to move Julius because if RJ keeps coming, it's gonna have to be. There's only there can only be one true leader on the squad. One person they got to follow in the last minute. They can't have divided loyalty. It can't be like two people fighting over the ball with 10 seconds to go. So
Yeah, yeah. I well, I mean, even if the Knicks do decide to move on from Rando, I think it's just going to be so difficult uh, if he's not playing, you know, uh, how he played 2 years ago, where he was, second team, all NBA, made his first playoff. I mean, not playoff. I'm sorry. Yeah, well, he did make the playoffs, but his first, All Star appearance as well. And
mhm.
it's going to be really difficult. It's going to be really really difficult. Um,
Yeah.
I just hope that Tibbs figures out a balance,
Mhm.
and he doesn't hold these kids back. You know, and if he can create that balance, and one of the things I don't know if you caught the other day, Tibbs's press conference when he was asked about playing, Obi and Randall together. He kind of made a snide remark like, I don't just look at statistics. I watch every single game and I see what's going on in the game, and he took real offense to it. But I think that's where Tibbs being so stubborn
Mhm.
and not seeing, hey, let's let's not play defense to just stop the other team and adjust to them defensively. We
Mhm.
have to do that. We can make other teams adjust to us offensively, and I think that's one of the things that really hinders Tibbs, coaching ability is him making those offensive adjustments on the fly.
I agree with you. And Tibbs is like he's annoying when he gets like when you get into those because he will never admit, and I get it. Especially in New York, you don't want to admit that you made mistakes, especially to the media, because then you don't want there to be like, the narrative like, oh, he's constantly making mistakes and he doesn't know what he's doing. So I get it. However, honestly, I think you can kind of see everything Tiz was looking at last year. I think the last time we talked about how like because he was seen because I think every every rotation or every 5 man combination that had a plus net rating on the floor had Alec Burks on it, and so he thought as a result that he needs to play Alec Burks. Like he Alec Burks had to be in the lineup and had to be the point guard because he was the closest thing to a point guard, and because he was a plus player on all the because the lineups were plus when he was on it because he was basically the one constant on each of those lineups. But it could be by fluke, right? It could be coincidental. And so that's why a lot of times you can't just look at that net rating and say, okay, because this player has a net rating on all the lineups that he's playing in, you can't just look at that. You really got to look at like all the other stuff, the individual stats. You got to look at what is he shooting and like how's he performing against his individual matchups. And Burks was terrible. I mean, he was minus against his matchups. And I think for the most part throughout the season, he was also outscored by his matchups every game. And so with Burks, and so when you look at that, if that person individually, his matchup is more efficient and the matchup is scoring more than he scores, then it's possible that Burks, yes, he might be a good chemistry guy, but it's possible he's also a drag on a team. Maybe you're just kind of like, I think a lot of times these guys, they kind of look at a lot of these statistics in isolation. And I think, um, it can be a little troublesome. Sometimes you can't just look at like certain things like in a vacuum, right? It's like, oh, with this lineup, it was great. And he was great with this lineup. Sometimes you got to look at all of it as a whole. You got to look at the overall statistics to kind of make a better judgment. And I think that's what Tiz was doing. I think he kind of looked at some stats in isolation. And look, they were team stats he was looking at. And so that's why he thought Birchwood was the way to go. However, he never tried anything else. He didn't try anything else aside from Burks, aside for Kemba Walker. But we know Kemba Walker wasn't going to work. But he didn't want to try anything else aside from Alec Burks. And I know he made like it's just they made a mistake with the analytics. And I think, honestly, I think that Brock Aller group and his analytics team, I think they make mistakes too. I think they make a lot of mistakes. Like I said, I think the last show we did, I talked about how, and I always keep talking about their decision to bring in Kemba Walker and Fournier. That's like the perfect example that the analytics team, they clearly don't really know what they're doing. And it's kind of tough to say that because everybody thinks this his Brock Aller and his group, they're geniuses. But I'm just a dude like I don't even have a degree in mathematics. I've taken a lot of math courses throughout my lifetime, and these guys are probably have master's degree or even PhDs in mathematics, and it's like, and I still don't know why they're still making these mistakes and why they still screw up. And I think that's a problem with Tibbs. He just made a mistake with the analytics last year, and now he's talking. Now he's going away from like, oh, it's like I don't care about the analytics. It's not just the analytics. I watched games, but the eye test also tells you that like you should play Obi more. The eye test tells you all these things, and so I think he's just being defensive, and he just never wants to admit he's wrong, and so that's pretty much what it is with the coach.
Okay.
So the other
Yeah.
thing I wanted to ask you was wanted to ask about. So obviously we have like a lot of young players on the bench. We have IQ, Obi, and everybody's looking at them, and we got Grimes. Which one do you think is gonna? Who do you think out of those three? Actually, out of IQ, Grimes, Obi, and Cam, which one do you think has the biggest breakout this season?
Hmm. So we said Obi,
Obi,
Cam,
Cam,
or IQ,
IQ, and then Grimes is the other one.
and Grimes. Well, we got to see if Grimes can stay healthy,
True. That is
right?
true.
We got to see if he can stay healthy. He's walking around with a sore foot, so you won't see him tonight. Uh,
And he was injured a lot last year.
he was, he was,
Yeah.
and so that's going to play a factor. Um, I think this is a good one. Um, I think you're going to see it. I would love to say Cam, but
Hmm.
we just don't know how much playing time Cam will receive,
Yeah.
and will he put Cam in the right position? Because we saw Cam, at the three. We could see Cam at the four. Cam can play the two. I would love to see Cam at the two. I really would. I think
Hmm.
you would. Uh, I think he would be a long wing, and just from defensive, a defense perspective, I think we would see more turnovers. Um, you know, putting having I think he would cause more turnovers, and so I think you're going to see IQ and Obi. And if I had to narrow it down between the two, I believe it's going to be Obi. I really do. I feel like uh, just statistically, again, I'll keep saying this until I'm blue in the face. When it comes to Obi Toppin, if you look at his career, what he has done, not just with the Knicks, but look at what he has done from playing in, JUCO, playing in college, just everywhere he has gone, he has been the underdog. He has always been counted out. And he makes significant strides each year. Every year, he makes significant strides. And I project that he will do the same. Because what's going to happen? The game is going to slow down for him. He's going to continue speeding up as the game slows down.
He's faster than the game right now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But he's going to start seeing the game a lot slower. He's going to realize that he can get past a lot of these guys. One of the, there's a lot of things that people, when they judge Obi Toppin, can he create his own shot? That's one, when they uh, compare him, Julius Randle. Obviously, Julius can create his own shot. We know this.
Mhm.
He definitely plays a brand of bully ball, which I'm wondering now that he's lost his weight, it won't be so easy for him to drop his shoulder and just kind of barrel into people.
Mhm.
So I'm curious to see how that plays out. But I feel like with Obi, if he can consistently hit that mid-range shot, his three-pointer came around really, really strong those last 20 games of the season last year,
Yeah.
and I feel like uh, he starts uh, going to the basket. Plus, I mean, obviously he'll get his, easy points off the fast break. And, and people feel like, oh, that's just, a one trick pony. But stop it. You got to figure out a way to, hey, when the rebound is, somebody rebounds the ball, he takes off. Well, okay. You know, if you can't stop him, think how many of those points that we get these easy points
Yeah.
that was able to keep us in games because of those points.
Yeah.
And you don't see a lot of other players to be able to do it. And the fact that he can jump out of the freaking arena,
Mhm.
you know, you can throw the ball up there and he can catch it from anywhere, and be able to get those 2 points. So
Yeah.
that would be my person. Well, who do you think?
It's like it's a tough one too, right? It's like I'm with you because it's like between IQ and Obi, but I'm gonna have to go with Obi with you as well because with IQ, I feel like they keep obviously I'm so happy they got Jalen Brunson because he's a very efficient player, very good floor general, and I think that the Knicks really need Jalen Brunson. But obviously, I think it gets in the way of IQ being able to develop more and even play more point guard role, play more as a point guard
Okay.
unless they allow him to basically be the point guard on this with the second team, and then basically allow D Rose to be the two guard or combo guard. But I don't know if they'll do that. I know they kind of him and D Rose they tend to share the duties sometimes, but it's usually mostly D Rose who's basically the point guard with that second unit. So I think it's going to be Obi. Especially with now you have Jalen Brunson and you got Rose back, and then they all see what Obi did towards the end of last year. They're gonna be like, yo, this kid, he's here. Obi has arrived. So they're gonna be looking for Obi. They're gonna be looking for him on fast breaks, lobs. Honestly, even on half court, they're gonna be looking for ways to get him more involved. Um, and then kind of going back to when you were talking about the coach now wanting to play Julius and Obi. To me, I think that's just the craziest thing in the world to me in basketball, like I mean, these two guys, you can play them together. It just doesn't make any sense to me to see why you can't play both of them together. Because Obi, especially now his shot has come around a little bit, he can help you space the floor if you want to play him at the five. And it's like and he's worried about supposedly rebounding. Like Obi is a decent rebounder. Granted, he needs to improve with the rebound. I agree with that. But he's not like terrible as a defensive rebounder either. Because I guess the issue because he leaks out all the time, and so
Right.
maybe. But that's just like it's just on the coach. Is like you just talk to him like, hey, look, I want to play both of you together, but this is what I need. Can you do this for me? So to me, I just think it's just kind of crazy because both of them, like and I think, it creates so much stress for this team too, because now like I said, you have divided loyalties with fans. But I think it'll be great if they can actually have both of these players on the team, especially if Julius Randle like improves this year and does play off the ball more. I mean, man, but I do think Obi is the one who actually breaks out because it's just if they give him the minutes this year and now they've seen Obi is actually productive, they're going to be looking for him. Jalen, if he's on the floor with Jalen, Jalen's going to look for him. If he's on the floor with Rose, Rose is going to be looking for him. If it's him and IQ is going to be looking for him. So I think he's the one who breaks out this year. So I definitely agree
Oh,
with you on that.
well, yeah, absolutely. I think if you look at, and I won't stay on Obi for so long. I know we got a couple of more topics.
Yeah.
Like the statistics, I think what I sent you. Um, Obi, and where he's played 43 games, where he's gotten received anywhere between 10 to 19 minutes, he's averaged 6.8 points per game
Yeah.
and 3 rebounds. His percentage is he's still shooting over 50%, between 52%. When Obi plays 20 minutes to 29 minutes, he scores um, 12.8 points per game, 5.7 rebounds. Still shoots 55%. So
Yeah.
he's actually shooting better when he plays longer. Now, when Obi plays 30 minutes, 30 to 39 minutes. Now, let me go back. When he plays from 20 minutes to 29 minutes, he did that 12 games. He shot the 12 points per game, which is almost 12.8, close to 13. 30 minutes to 39 minutes, he scored 23 points per game, 6.8 rebounds. When he played 40 minutes or more, and this only happened 3 times, when he's played 40 minutes or more, he's averaging 26 points per game and 7 rebounds, shooting 56% from the field. Now, and also, I didn't mention, he's shooting 40% from 3-point range. So when he's playing 40 minutes or more, he's shooting 40% from 3-point range. When he's playing 30 minutes to 39 minutes, he's shooting 48% from 3-point range. So the math is here. The math is here.
It's crazy. It is there. Like it's and that's why I just don't understand what Tom Thibodeau, what he be thinking sometimes. Honestly, like even if Julius Randle balls out this year, plays well, and he plays really well off ball, the whole point is to have your best players on the court. You try to get your best players on the court at the same time. And it just kind of baffles me that he just, I mean, you can play down the stretch. He should be able to play Obi and Julius like, some significant minutes, not necessarily the whole game, but like because we got Mitchell Robinson, but especially like in the fourth quarter when Mitch becomes a liability, maybe on from the free throw line. Um, I think they should be playing like I'm thinking like 8 minutes with both of them on the floor at least, in my opinion. Because and then the other thing too is like it's not just your most talented players should be on the floor at the same time if you can do that, if the chemistry is right, but the best finishers. Obi is the best finisher they have on his team by far. There's no better finisher on his team than Obi. It's like, and Julius, I mean, I think they can both play 4 and 5 interchangeably. I think it's just kind of silly the coach doesn't want them. The whole point is to get your most efficient players on the floor, and Obi is like the most efficient. As Mitchell Robinson is the most efficient, but honestly, I think it's really Obi, because Obi is the one who can actually fly, get through traffic, and finish above everyone else. Mitch, first couple 2-3 years he was able to do that, but the way he put on last year, I think that was a bad idea because he lost a lot of athleticism, and he can't even really do that anymore. You don't see Mitch flying through the air anymore like he used to. So I think it's pretty much Obi, and so yeah.
Okay. Now, I know one of the questions you had as far as the RJ's expectations.
Yeah, yeah. What do you
And
think? What are your expectations for RJ this year?
RJ's expectations. I expect RJ to elevate his game. I really do, and he has to. Now, hey, RJ's been receiving a pass, if you ask me, my personal opinion.
Mm,
Uh, just from an accountability standpoint.
yeah.
But as soon as you sign a lucrative contract in New York, expectations immediately change. Now, even though that contract doesn't go into effect this year,
Mm,
and I think Knicks fans need to be reminded of that. He signed the extension, however, it
mhm,
does not go in effect this year. So he's still making his rookie minimum. However, the expectation it does change because we are locked in and we are invested in you. Now that we have given you the big bucks, it comes with a higher expectation. So, when he makes some of those bonehead plays and he has, he doesn't turn the ball over as frequently as Randall does, but he does have his, he has his challenges. And so, the fans are going to let him know, he's going to hear the heat. And I want to see if he's going to be able to rise to the challenge. I think he will. I
Mhm.
really do. But we'll see. This is going to be an interesting season. I'm truly excited.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you on that. It's for me, it's what I'm keeping an eye on is not necessarily the points per game for me, it's just really the shooting percentage. If he can improve his efficiency, get it back up to like 44% the way it was like 2 years ago, I think, it'll be really good. And he doesn't need to, if he stays at 20 get per game and he's his shooting percentage is 44, 45%, that'd be great for New York. I think focusing too much on the points per game maybe not be a great thing. I think he just needs to focus on, maybe not being too tunnel vision. And if he knows, like, he doesn't have a great shot, like trying to see if he can find a way out, like find an escape pass or something instead of just throwing something up at the rim. But what could be even better if, like, hopefully if the finishing he worked on this offseason, if we can see it. I mean, there was like little games here and there last year where you were like, wow, he's actually finishing. But with RJ, it's like he can never maintain any consistency, to tell you the truth. He's like, it's and it was like I don't even think there was a stretch of 10 games where he shot like above 43%. I'm not talking about where he averaged 43%, but give me a 10 game stretch where you shot like not even, let's say even 40%. It's like and that's very hard to come by with RJ. And so if he can just get his percentage up to like 44, 45%, I think I'll be really happy because I know he's going to average probably 18 to 20 points per game. But it's just the efficiency is the biggest thing for me. And everything else he's been really great at, even making plays for his teammates. Um, the I guess the last question I wanted to ask, it was just more with the in terms of minutes. How many minutes do you think Obi gets, and how many minutes do you think our IQ averages this year?
Hmm, that is a good question. I think Tom Thibodeau has to increase Obi's minutes to at least 25,
Mhm.
25 consistent minutes. Uh, and I feel like IQ was already averaging roughly about, I think he was already in that 20 range.
Mhm.
Uh, I think it's going to be, I would say IQ somewhere around 27 minutes.
Okay.
And the reason why I feel like he's going to increase his minutes, I think you're going to see times where they're going to put Jalen Brunson and pair him with IQ on the court.
Okay.
And I feel like uh, if they do that, especially ending games, so you got to think about it. Who's going to end? Who when that last 5 minutes and 6 minutes in the fourth quarter,
Yeah.
who's going to be on the court? We know Jalen Brunson's going to be on the court. And I felt like, well, who's going to be that starting two guard that he's going to pair with him? Is it going to be Fournier?
Hmm.
Is it going to be Cam? Doubt it. Right? Uh, the most logical person, again, is going to be probably IQ. And so that's where you're going to see his minutes increase. And I think from an Obi's topic standpoint, I think they're going to decrease Randall's minutes. Because I think Randall is averaging, let's see, minutes wise. I just saw the statistic with Randall. Minutes, last year he averaged 35 minutes per game. The year before it was 37 minutes. And in 2019, he was averaging around 32.5 minutes.
Yeah.
So if you cut Randall's minutes down to roughly about 28 minutes a game, I think you'll get a nice even split between him and Obi, and I think the fans will appreciate uh, Tibbs compromising and not being so stubborn and and giving them an opportunity because at the end of the day we want to win, right?
Yeah.
And we want to put the best team out there that's going to give us that best chance to win. And that may not be the same team each night, and that's maybe different players each night, and that's something that Tibbs has to be okay with. I think sometimes his loyalty is to a fault, so
Hmm.
that's why you'll see Derrick Rose out there some days where he's like, doesn't really have it today,
Yeah.
and he still puts them out there, and when we know Julius Randle is going to be out there, so um, it's going to be interesting to see how he close out games this year. And so, to me, if Obi is playing well and Julius is not, you close out with Obi. You
Yeah.
know, don't. I feel like Tibbs will, he'll put this bench in for a spark, and
Hmm.
they will rally and bring us back, and then he'll yank them, and he'll put back these starters in, who don't close out the game. They don't bring us over the hump. And so that's where we got to see some adjustments. Yeah, we got to see some adjustments. And hopefully, um, if Tib, hopefully he listens to this podcast, and I think we have given him some great advice on what
I
on
know
what he
he's
should do.
listening. I think some of these guys do listen, to tell you the truth. They
Yeah,
definitely listen to
yeah.
a lot of these guys. It's clear they listen to Knicks Fan TV.
Oh,
I would not
absolutely.
be
Yeah,
surprised if they listen to a bunch of these podcasts, because that's all we're doing. We talk about these guys all day. So why wouldn't they want to listen and hear what the fans think? So I think they
sure,
listen.
sure.
I hope they
Yeah.
listen to this one. I hope Tibbs specifically listens to this. And
Absolutely. Yeah, because we watch the games like two Tips. We watch the old games, and we just don't look at statistics as well. We do both.
I know,
So
right? Crazy. But yeah, I kind of agree with you with the minutes. I'm not sure how it's going to be done, because I just don't. I can't. I don't know. I don't trust Tibbs really, for him to do the right thing on this sometimes. Because I think sometimes he'll have his mind made up and he won't back off of it. Um,
right,
so, but I think what you said will be good, and it will be ideal and really good for the team. But we'll kind of have to wait and see. I think with IQ, I think that's a very good point you make, because he's probably going to end up closing some games. Um, I remember early last year, and I think he's going to play a lot of minutes too, like you said, because I just don't think, honestly, I don't think D Rose should be playing. Honestly, he shouldn't be playing more than 18 minutes a game. Um, I really don't. But I don't know, like Tibbs, his philosophy is just crazy to me. Because last year, it was like, when you look at the both point guards from last year, honestly, we would have been okay last year if he just played uh if he played Kemba Walker maybe like 18 minutes a game, play Rose like 18 minutes a game, and then you play someone else like the rest of the minutes, Deuce or whoever else you want to play at that point guard position. It sounds a little crazy that you have so many point guards, but that's the hand he was dealt last year. I mean, like what he did last year, basically, people don't realize how he basically destroyed the team last year. Because number one, you knew Kemba Walker could not sustain over 30 minutes a game. And he played Kemba Walker like 36 minutes. Like when the season began, he was playing Kemba Walker over 30 minutes a game. Like in a lot of games, Kemba was like at 35, 36 minutes a game. That was mind boggling to me. And so you can't play Kemba Walker that many minutes. Derrick Rose, like when the first year he was with us during the regular season, sometimes mostly he was averaging like 23 minutes, 23 to 25 minutes per game. But then like when Kemba went down, or when Kemba was out of the lineup, he started playing Rose like 35, 36 minutes a game for like a whole week. And so it was just crazy to me. And so, of course, both point guards weren't going to last. They both went down. I think last year was just all Tip's fault, like because of the rotations, because he got both of those guards injured. Because both of those guards are old, and you can't play them like not throughout the course of a season. They can't play more than 20 minutes a game, especially if you want to keep them fresh all season and keep them for the playoffs. You can't do that. And so, but this year, I don't know. Like it's if he learned his lesson from last year, I mean, he would keep Derrick Rose under 20 minutes, 18 minutes max, and just let all these other guys, let IQ rock out. The rest of the, the rest of the minutes at the point guard position if necessary. or even like have him close the minutes. So I do see IQ playing playing like close to 30 minutes a game as well. That's definitely possible. Um, the other person I want to touch on in terms of minutes and stuff, everyone makes a big deal about Quentin Grimes, about how he must start. No, he must not start. I mean, like, first of all, because I've like the stats show that he's like, at least the ones from last year, that he's still young, right? He's still developing and he still needs to work on being more aggressive, right? And getting up more shots while he's in the game, and also being a little more efficient. But he's injury prone. Last year, he was injury prone. And this year, he's starting off with an injury. And so, honestly, I think the New York Knicks, I think what they don't realize, I think Tibbs is going to be patient with these guys because they don't have to worry about Grimes' contract for like what, another 2 years, you know. So it's like, so I think they got other things to worry about. They got other fish to fry. I think they're not going to worry about Grimes getting burned right now, especially if they can get away with playing someone else because they got decisions to make. They got to worry about Cam and they need to worry about Obi and also IQ coming up too. These guys are like where contracts are coming up like next year that they need to like figure out what they need to do with these guys. And so that's what I do. That's what I think about the minutes. Hopefully, like Tibbs does the right thing, and but to me, it's really crazy how he just like he's so off when it comes to minutes with these players, and I feel like it's like right there in front of him, and he just kind of goes the other way on it.
Yeah,
But
I agree. I think so. Emmanuel quickly averaged 23 minutes last year, um, and shot 39% from the field and 34% from 3-point range. Uh, Quentin Grimes averaged 17 points. No, I'm sorry, 17 minutes per game. Shot 40% from the field and 38% from the 3-point land.
yeah,
And so um, I still feel like I don't think like Emmanuel Quickly's defense is horrible. I think he definitely provides effort.
mhm,
He's still, he has that small. It reminds me of Isaiah Thomas um, physique size, just so small.
yeah,
But he doesn't back down. Um, I think offensively, I don't think that Grimes is anywhere as talented as Quickly is. Um, Now, obviously, from a 3-point perspective, that's where Grimes is known. He's a 3-and-D guy.
mhm,
I don't see, I don't, he can't create his own shot. Grimes quickly can, quickly can easily go and create his own shot.
mhm.
And he's also the gift and the curse where he can launch it from half court too. So,
Yeah, yeah. When he launches it from half court, like you got to make it at least 40% of the time if you're launching it from there. So yeah, that sometimes is like it's a little crazy. Funny, last I went to a not this past summer games, but the one a year ago where Obi and IQ played, where they were featured on the offensive end, and I went to the summer league games. So this was like 1 year ago, before this one. It was like they were not, like if you watch the crowd, like a lot of these people, they weren't Knicks fans because it's like a bunch of people they're there to see a bunch of games, right? And so a lot of
sure.
them weren't familiar with like the Knicks. You should see some of the comments like people in the crowd was making about quickly. They're like, "Who the hell does this guy? Who the heck does this guy think he is?" And like, it was really interesting to see. People don't really like it, but I think a lot of times is like, because they're not fans. They don't really understand. They don't know who he is, and they don't realize that he actually has that range. But it was an interesting tidbit that it was that I kind of basically observed like a couple over a year ago when I went to the summer league games to watch him play. So that was interesting. But
Yeah, that sounds like fun.
yeah, well, so I think we're going to try to wrap it up here. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on before we wrap it up for the day?
Um, well, just an interesting note uh, for tonight's game. Apparently, Kevin Knox, Burks, Noel are all already injured.
Really? Wow. Oh
They are
wow.
all injured. Yeah. So, So we've definitely significantly upgraded by just dropping a little extra baggage.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We definitely did. Knox was the one that was the most disappointing for me. He was a pretty high pick, and I kind of felt like the Knicks ruined him. It was honestly, I think, when they drafted Knox, if they had Thibodeau as the coach, I think Knox would have had a better chance. Um, but it was just like they had Fizdale, and Fizdale, the dude was just all talk. He just let the kids do whatever they want. I remember Fizdale used to complain about like the kids, all they do is play video games and they don't spend enough time on their game or watching videos. Like, how can you even as a coach even come out and say that and your team is that bad and they have a bad work ethic? Where do you think they get that from? And these are all young kids, it's like so it's the coach culture comes from top down, right? And so the coach basically is the one who's going to set the culture of the team. And if the coach isn't strong enough to set the culture on the team, then he's not going to be a very good coach or a great leader, or he could get lucky and just happen to have great players on the team with great work ethic, and some coaches benefit like that, but some coaches just aren't very good at setting culture, and because these are like 18-year-old kids. They're going to do whatever you tell them to do, honestly, especially if you're like an adult. I think a lot of times people kind of overthink, think like these kids are like, basically just straight up lazy, scummy, or whatever it might be. But I think a lot of times it just depends on where they end up and what kind of an organization you have around them. But Knox was the one that was like very disappointing. He didn't have the motor, so it was like the probability he was going to be a great player uh, wasn't that high, wasn't very high anyway. However, he had the talent, and he if you just kind of like had the right kind of coach to mold him and to kind of help him develop the right work ethic, I think he would have been better off. But it was unfortunate he had Fizdale, so that was pretty much that. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's funny, none of them they're all injured.
Yeah, and Knox, I had high hopes for Knox because he was a Kentucky product,
Yeah, yeah,
and Kentucky is consistent, bringing out really good players. And I felt like, and that's the Knox, the fear that I had with Knox is the same fear I had with Cam Reddish.
yeah.
I think they have all the talent in the world to
Hmm.
be really, really good athletes, but they don't have the motor.
Yeah,
It just doesn't look like it's fun being out there. Like they want to, I just don't feel like they want to be on the court.
yeah,
And that's what I worry. Yeah.
yeah.
One thing I want to leave. One thing I want to leave you with before we go. I just want to throw out just a interesting fact about Obi. Okay.
Sure.
So Obi in high school,
Hmm.
uh, was a late bloomer. Uh, was a late bloomer, and he was 6'2" in high school as a junior. All right. His senior year, he became 6'5".
Okay.
Right. He's only played one season of varsity high school ball.
Wow.
Right. Majority of NBA players, I would say, probably played varsity, probably almost th- nothing less than 3 years, but most likely all 4 years of high school.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
So that's something to kind of think about. Right. Um, and he ended up transferring to a prep school in Baltimore, where he ended up averaging 17 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists. And then he also, so he played for a couple of high schools, and he also led this. It's called the Ossining High School to a 17-5 record, first conference title in 10 years. Okay, I mean
Mhm.
so he has. If you look, and so each time we meet, I'm going to give you just a fun fact. So when I keep saying this guy statistically gets better, he's a late bloomer. He's just one of those. He's that late flower to blossom. I'm
Yeah.
going to keep providing you just something a little small. So that's my little small one today.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
mean,
Obi in high school.
it's definitely something good to keep in mind, and and it actually makes sense. It really lines up, right? And you can kind of see, um, as the season goes on, he gets better. As the years go on, he gets better. For me, the biggest eye opener for me with him was like, because I was very tough on him his first year, because you can clearly see he was struggling on defense with the
Oh yeah.
rotations a little bit, and then he wasn't very confident. You can tell he just wasn't confident. But then, um, the playoffs against the Hawks, it was like, that really just surprised me. I mean, he wasn't playing like a lot of minutes or anything, but when he was on the floor, he was clearly not scared, and so, just the fact that seeing him and seeing that he was like, when there's a crowd, and the lights are bright, he's actually, he turns up, he gets, he performs. And so that's when I first kind of like realized, okay, the Knicks may have something here. But then the next year is like, it was just more about just kind of watching the way he was playing throughout even early in the season, just like, because you started seeing things like, okay, now he's using the athleticism, is like he's like flying through the crowd, flying through the paint, and there's people underneath there, and it's like okay. And so, but yeah, I agree with you. It's like, it kind of, what you say definitely lines up with what we're seeing as he gets more experience, or when he gets more playing time, he just gets better. Um, but so the other thing I'm actually gonna, before we go, I'm just gonna announce real quick that so I'm using this poster again because I do want to start like the next raffle. And so this raffle is gonna end November 4th, and it's basically the same thing. It's if you subscribe to the channel, and send us an email with your information, you get a chance to win a free Knicks ticket. The winner, his name is Gene. The winner for the last one, his name was Gene, and he picked the Hawks game on November 2nd. So he's going to that Hawks game. And so hopefully, whoever's listening, if you sign up and you subscribe, you get to pick whatever game you want to see, as long as the tickets are available. And
Yeah,
so
that's
thank you.
awesome. Yeah.
Yep.
Congrats, Gene. Yeah, congrats.
Yeah, that's really good. It was that last night was, it was fun. And actually, I want us to, the next time when we announce the winner next time, I definitely want us to do the live stream together. We'll kind of make sure we schedule it well ahead of time, so we
Okay.
can, so we can get a good time to do it. But it was fun. It was definitely fun last night. It would have been better if it was both of us, because it was like I was still trying to work it out and stuff, and I'm still trying to find a way to do it. I had to do it on my phone, but there were some things I was trying to work out with the computer I couldn't work out, so I had to do it on the phone. So it was a little on the clunky side, but it definitely got done. But thank you everyone for watching. Please, before you go, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and again, just send us an email if you want the free Knicks tickets, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
So I'm going to end it.